In this set of videos, we would like to discuss the identification of an operated fire sprinkler system and the related shutdown procedures for those systems. What we wanted to show you is a normal, non-activated fire sprinkler system so that you can tell the difference between the two. Here we have a wet system. Okay. It's being fed from the floor, coming up. That shows us the flow path of water. Here we have the supply pressure gauge. That tells you how much water the city is supplying to the sprinkler system. And we have the system pressure, which is controlled by the excess pressure pump. We always want a little bit more pressure up top than we do below. You can see that this system has approximately 150 psi above the clapper compared to 50 or 60 psi below. The extra pressure up top helps us prevent false alarms on the clapper. On a dry system, you would have no more than 40 psi up here. There's a greater mechanical advantage in a dry system. So with 40 psi, we can hold back almost 200 pounds of water pressure coming up. That helps to prevent the false tripping of that system. Our main control valve for this system is an OS&Y valve, an outside screw and yoke. Here you can see the screw. It's protruding from the valve handle, so that means it's open. Later on during our shutdown procedures, when I close this, you'll see the screw retract into the valve handle, denoting that it's closed. Here we have our main 2-inch drain valve. Once the system's closed and no new water is being introduced, we would slowly and cautiously open this up to drain all the water remaining in the system. One of the accessories we have on this system is an excess pressure pump. That takes the water from below the clapper and puts it up top to give us the pressure we need to prevent false alarms. And we have the control switch for that pump as well. We touched on a little bit in the last video of identifications of the systems being wet or dry. I wanted to go over a bit more of that and the shutdown procedure for those systems. Almost every system you come across will have an inspection tag on it. They will always have an area that will tell you whether it's a wet valve or a dry valve. This one is noted as a wet valve. It's got water in the piping system. A dry valve would have air in the piping system. This system has an excess pressure pump. Pumps move water. So the pump takes water from below the clapper and puts it up top. If you see an excess pressure pump, you have a wet system. If you have an air compressor, it moves air, so the air would be getting moved into the system piping. Then you would know you would have a dry system. There's also identification on each alarm or dry valve. Sometimes they're hard to read, but that is another way that you can tell. These gauges read both air and water. Many times down here you will see wording that says either air or water. This one does both, so it's hard, you can't really tell by that. And this one does the same. So that is probably some easy ways to identify the system. Now to identify if it's operating or not, when you come into the room, it doesn't matter if it's a single standalone system like this, or you could walk into a building that has multiple sprinkler rooms with single standalone systems or multiple systems in those rooms. You may walk into a very large building that has a huge sprinkler room that could have up to dozens of sprinkler systems in them. Those can be a little daunting to try and figure it out if you're not certain how to do it. What you need to do is identify the system that's operating, and you can ignore everything else for the next little while until you get that one system shut down. You can deal with all the accessories later. Ways to determine which system is operating, there's several of those. You look at the system gauges. If the system gauges both read the same pressure, that is a very good identifier that that's the system that is operated. You will also be able to tell, if you're looking at a single system or the other ones, the system that is operated, the needles in the gauges will be vibrating a lot harder on the operated system than on the other systems. If it's very loud or you can't see enough to tell whether the gauges are moving, you can hear water flowing through. Also, if you put your hand on the system piping, you can feel vibrations through the pipe of the water flowing. You will also be able to tell a temperature difference. You can put your hand on two different pipes. You will see a definite temperature difference in the operated system. It'll be much colder due to the introduction of new water into the system. The other systems will have acclimatized temperature-wise to the building temperature. On a hot summer day, if you walk into an area, a sprinkler room, the system that is operated will most likely have condensation on the pipe. It's another good way to tell. Those are pretty much the basic ways to tell. Sometimes you have to use multiple methods to figure out what it is, but those ways should help you figure those out.